Hello, hello. My name is Linda, also known as Tortajala around the internet. I love creative journaling and all things stationery. And today I want to share my version of a currently inked video. I definitely love watching currently inked videos. It's a great way to be introduced to new ink colors and also hear about how people find certain ink and pen combinations, how they work together. So here I just want to quickly show you, I recently got these Tomoe River paper notebooks. They are 52 GSM Tomoe River paper in the cream color, and they are by the Italian maker named Boz Notebooks on Etsy. I will link below if you are interested. But I was going to use these notebooks because they're like so pretty as like an ink log or a reference type of thing, but they're actually glue bound books. And that means that the pages, they actually like rip off really easily, like tear off. And I'm realizing just now that maybe that's actually what they're made for, sort of like a pad of Tomoe River paper, as opposed to like a traditional notebook that is bound and like sewn together. So I'm gonna have to stick with my Hobonichi A6 Techos as my like ink journals or ink exploration journals, even though I know there have been paper changes and issues that have hit the stationery community this year. Basically, the Hobonichi brand Tomoe River paper, it's just not what it used to be. So there are challenges to face when it comes to using fountain pens and inks in the new Hobonichi like notebooks and planners. The notebooks that I have here are from the Etsy seller Boz Notebooks. They seem to have like older Tomoe River paper. When I write with the same fountain pen in my Hobonichi versus this notebook paper, they don't look the same. So obviously we will see. Like in my Hobonichi weeks, especially for 2025, anything that I write in there, the ink just like spreads a little, so an extra fine like does not look like an extra fine. Anyway, so I bought a bunch of these notebooks just to try them out, and they're really pretty. But yeah, the pages rip off easily, so I'm going to use them in a different way, and not as like an ink journal kind of thing, because I was considering using like a bigger A5. But yeah, we'll save that for another time. So first, I want to preface this video by saying that I'm not going to be doing a currently inked video every month because, as you might have realized from the title, I have all of my fountain pens inked. Maybe it's insane and not the right thing to do, but as a newbie or like novice fountain pen user, I'm still in the stage of like exploration, and obviously I like the variety and I enjoy trying different things out. And so I feel like it's just more fun to have more colors inked up and different pens to choose from all the time. I also want to say that I have all economical and budget friendly pens. They're all entry level or like economical dupes from many of the Chinese companies out there. I don't have any super fancy pens. Um, and I suppose as a new user, I sort of prefer this like approach to learning about fountain pens and inks and all that kind of stuff. Variety is fun, and like for the price of an expensive pen, I can get five other budget-friendly options. Different nibs, different size pens, different styles, different brands, just the gamut to really learn like what I enjoy and prefer. So I have this 2025 Hobonichi Techo in the A6 size, and I've already swatched the Diamine Inkvent calendar onto the month of December in here, but I'm going to officially start in this book by making all these swatches of all of my fountain pens and what ink is in them right now, which is going to serve as like a quick guide for me to all my pens and the inks inside of them because sometimes I just forget. So this is like a really good way to have a reference. It's just a quick list as opposed to any other kind of like detailed information or experimentations because I actually have another Hobonichi Techo that I already started previously. Um, and my other Hobonichi Techo is actually the 2023 version of the Hobonichi A6 Techo that quote unquote is supposed to have like better paper, right? Because it's before like the Sanzen change. But I basically had started this 2023 one as like an ink log, but more like ink exploration kind of journal because, the paper is supposed to work well with fountain pen inks. So I would do just random experiments and tests and, just want to use my fountain pen inks and pens in here. Like, just a little bit of background. Like, I bought my first fountain pen in 2017. It's a Pilot Metropolitan, and I used it for years before ever buying another pen or even a bottle of ink. I had used it with cartridges, black ink for like a couple years. I didn't buy my first bottle of ink until 2021. So it took me a while to get into fountain pens and inks in a sense, not because I wasn't interested. It was more me trying to have some kind of self control and not wanting to fall down the rabbit hole because it is a slippery slope, right? There are so many people out here like who share their journey and in like the span of 1 year they would have already bought like 30 pretty pricey pens. So I was like, no, I can't do that. So my journey, I suppose, is just like very, very slow, and it isn't until now that I'm actually actively like experimenting more, and that's why I have so many pens. So that other Techo is basically like a bunch of tests and info and things and my thoughts and all that kind of stuff. So suffice to say, I have fallen down the rabbit hole now, because I bought, the Diamine ink vent calendar, have so many inks, and so many pens now, but I still consider myself a beginner because I'm still learning, like what I like, what I don't like, and I'm using this phase to learn more about myself as a fountain pen user before investing in something more pricey. Um, and it just gives me the freedom to like play around. I'm also sort of like a clumsy person, or heavy-handed maybe. I have like already broken nibs and feeds, and I've also cracked some of the, their cheaper pens. So again, part of the process of learning and hopefully, growing. So let me go through each pen, just doing a little color swatch and writing the name of the pen and the ink name so that I have everything documented for the start of 2025 and like a quick list to reference. So this first one is a TWSBI Eco in transparent purple color, and it's a stub like 1.1 millimeter nib, inked with diamine purple pizzazz. So this ink has been here too long. In this pen, I mean. I'm almost out of it, but it's coming out super dark and it doesn't even have like the shimmer that is supposed to be in this ink. Maybe it's because it's a giant nib, but I think it's mostly because I've had this ink in here forever and I'm like finally finishing it up kind of thing because the TWSBI Eco definitely has like it holds a lot of ink. But you'll see what I mean in terms of the difference because my second entry is also a TWSBI Eco, and I basically inked it up with the same exact ink because then I could see the difference between using the same ink in like the same brand, but like a stub nib versus an extra fine nib. Even though it's not really a good test because like I need to wash this one out and get rid of the old ink because again, when, this is part of the learning, right? When you have an ink in a pen for too long, it's probably like too much exposure to air, right? So it darkens. And it even happens sometimes in pens that I guess don't cap very well or something, maybe because of the exposure to air, the oxidation. Like you might write a sentence and it's darker to begin with, and then it lightens up to what the true color of the ink is, which, can be very annoying to some people. So this second pen is also a TWSBI Eco, but it is the cream and rose gold version with an extra fine nib and inked with the same ink, Diamine Purple Pizzazz, but you can see that it's actually like more purple. It has like some shimmer in it. So very, very different. Uh, when you look at that, like the two lines that I have there, they look like two completely different inks, but it's because one was old in the pen for who knows how long, and this TWSBI Eco Cream Rose Gold version I have just inked up, so like recently. So obviously it's still fresh and looking the way that you would expect it to look from the swatches and stuff. And it works fine with a shimmery ink, even though it is an extra fine nib. So that is good to know for, at least for the TWSBI Eco. So moving on, this is my Pilot Metropolitan, my very first fountain pen, and I had to look up like the full proper name because I totally forgot, and this is from a long time ago because I bought it in 2017. But this is the Pilot Metropolitan that is part of the Retro Pop collection in turquoise with a medium nib. And I feel like this is one of their just like classic lines or whatever. They probably still sell it, right? You can find it. It's not really rare or anything. But I bought this in Europe, and it actually takes a standard international converter, not like the proprietary Pilot ones. Like I had actually bought a Pilot converter when I decided that I was going to use like bottled inks, and it didn't fit. And I was like, what is going on? And that was when I realized that if you buy a Pilot Metropolitan in Europe, they actually make them differently. They don't take the proprietary Pilot converters and cartridges. They take the standard international ones, which I guess is a good thing because that means you can just buy any, regular cartridges and all that kind of stuff. The next fountain pen that I have is my Pilot Kakuno in the soft pink color. I think this is always stated as one of like the good beginner pens to go with. So that's probably why I bought it. It is in the MF nib, but oddly enough, it feels scratchy to me. It's inked up with Diamine Cerise, and as you can see, I'm sort of matchy-matchy with my ink colors to pens, even though that's entirely unnecessary. But yeah, I don't really use this one very much because I just don't love using the pen because of the scratchiness. And I ended up also not really loving the ink color that much. It was like a bit too bright. And this is one of the problems with buying inks when you sort of think you like it, but you're never gonna know until you try it. But here in Europe, it's a lot harder to get samples. So oftentimes, you just buy the whole bottle. The next pen that I have is a Sailor Prophet Junior. I bought like the set that they released. Um, I think it's called Harappa, like a pen and matching ink. And this particular one is the anteater one, so it has like the anteater illustrations on the pen itself. It's sort of like a demonstrator, like clear pen, but the anteater illustrations are like white, uh, printed on the pen. And it came with the ink Sailor 223, which is like a gray color. It seems like it's sort of plain and boring, but if you ever swatch this ink and add water, it will show like a whole bunch of other colors like purples and blues in the ink. So it's very fascinating, very fun to see. And I guess that's why people like swatching inks and like playing around with them because you get to see other effects and um, attributes of an ink besides just what it looks like in, regular writing. The next fountain pen I have is a Platinum Preppy, and it's labeled O3, which I believe is supposed to be equivalent to like a fine nib. And this was a limited edition color in the Wa collection that basically features like traditional Japanese designs. So this one is called Asanoha with like a translucent sort of red barrel with like gold colored stylized geometric hemp leaves printed on it. And I have like some kind of generic black cartridge in here, so I don't even know what the ink truly is. I just want to finish it up since I have them anyways. I think I must have gotten a lot of like black ink cartridges, like international, but like I don't even know what brand. I think it's probably off brand. And it came with like one of the pens at some point, like in my history of buying and ordering pens online. But since I have a bunch of these black ink cartridges, I was like, let me just use them because I probably use this pen the most for like some prompt journaling that I do, where it's just like long form writing. So that is what I've most commonly used it for. So I just put like black cartridge, but at some point I will switch it out. Next, I do also have a Lamy Safari. This is the mango color, so it's very pretty. I think it was special for like the year 2020. It is a medium nib, and I have the KWZ El Dorado ink in here. Again, very matchy matchy, I know, but unfortunately, I do not like this pen at all, which is, I guess, sort of sad because people tend to think like, oh, Lamy Safari, inexpensive, entry point kind of pen. But I do think sometimes it's like luck of the draw. Um, you know, I think that I just got a scratchy pen, and as a new user, at first I was sort of confused and I wasn't really sure like, is it, scratchy? Is it supposed to be this way? Is it like the feedback people are saying? But no, I think it's scratchy. You could sort of feel like there's a point where it's scratchier. And it's after I got my Sailor, it's definitely very different from the Sailor that is known to have feedback. So again, I am trying and learning, and I know that you can switch out like the Lamy nibs. Uh, but it's not really a pen that I like love the style of, and since it's scratchy, I don't use it very much. So one day maybe I will switch it out because they're not really super expensive. But I'm just making notes and slowly working through everything to again learn more about my likes and dislikes and habits before I go to the next stage of like trying to fix things or alter things to work better for me. So I'm just gonna go to the next page now, and I just put like some blotting paper in between. It's just like a piece of Tomoe River paper. So the next fountain pen I'm putting on my list here is a Kaweko. It is, or Kaweko, a Sport, and it has an extra fine nib. This is the dark olive color that has like the gold trim and everything. So I really like the way that it looks. It's really, really pretty, but it is a very light, pen. It's like a plastic, pocket pen. You can see that it seems like really dry, maybe because it's an extra fine nib. And I probably have to try it with like different inks because it sort of behaves differently, depending what I put into it. So I'm still in the exploration stage. Right now it has diamine pine needle inked in here, and it just feels really, really dry. But sometimes, oh, it's probably because there's like shimmer or something, right, in this ink. But other times I feel like it can seem wet, and it might be because, you know, when it comes to getting fountain pens, again, it is the luck of the draw because sometimes you're going to get a nib that is just, better. And sometimes you're going to get one that might seem scratchy in a certain spot, or depending on the angle in which you hold your pen. Sometimes, like, I hold my pen very like perpendicular to the paper, but then sometimes I hold it very like angled down more, and usually um, that will make a difference, like for many different pens. Not because it has a special nib or anything, but just because the way that it is, it changes it up. So I don't know, maybe I need to clean this pen out and start over. But yeah, I'm probably not great at cleaning all my pens. It's probably something that I have to learn how to be uh, better at doing. Um, Next, I have a whole bunch of Jinhao pens. This was when there was the craze in the fountain pen community. where everybody was buying the Jinhao pens because they're so inexpensive, and they basically look sort of like the Sailor Pro Gear Slim pens. Um, but like I admit that it they're just very fun to play with because they're probably like, sort of like a standard size pen that most people would be able to use in terms of size. And then they have a gajillion colors and they're all interchangeable. So you can unscrew like the top um, and bottom parts, like change the caps between them and sort of like make your own combination. So I think that that's, part of the fun part of sort of like creating your own pen. So this is the Jinhao 82. I got it in cream colored, fine nib, and I have Herbin Tear Differ uh, inked in here, and it's worked so well for me for a pen that costs like a couple of dollars. I wrote with it for like a whole year for my multi-year diary because I use like one ink color per year, so it worked totally fine. So of course I bought other Jinhao 82s. This one is a Jinhao 82, but I'm actually like using it reverse right now because it is a fude nib, or sometimes they call it bent nib. Basically, like the tip of the nib is bent so that you can get like an insanely giant line. But if you turn it around, you can still write like sort of, regular fine writing, which is, I think, amazing. Like for a pen that is a couple dollars, it's like working really well. So I think I'm not really sure what this color is called. It's like semi-transparent, but like I just call it chartreuse. But it's that color basically with gold trim. And the ink that I have in here is Rohr and Klingner Alt Goldgrun, which is, I think, like my favorite like regular ink. Like it doesn't have any shimmer or anything like that. It's such an inexpensive bottle of ink and it works so well. I just really like it. I don't think people always like talk about this brand a lot, but yeah, I just think it's so nice. Um, Next I have another Jinhao 82, and it's not like I needed another one, but again, they're so inexpensive. It's like $3 or $4. I don't know. So this one is another Jinhao 82, but it is like very transparent, sort of like green tealish colored. Um, and so it's exactly the same, like I said, as the other Jinhao 82s, but I've just kept each one like the way that um, the color that it is, but you can swap the caps, swap like you can take it, unscrew everything, even like the finial on top, I think. I think like every piece, like it just unscrews itself, so you could like mix and match and make your own. So this one, I think it's called Transparent Green, and I got it in a medium nib, and I have the Diamine Wishing Tree ink in here right now. And yeah, just playing around. And the nice thing about, like I said, having lots of pens is that you can ink up lots of colors and sort of like, play around, switch up your inks a lot more than if you only had a few pens. And then, of course, I had to get this Jinhao 82 Mini. So it's basically the same pen, but like miniature size because I guess they also have like Sailor Pro Gear minis, right? Um, and this one is in the lavender color, so I just had to have it. I actually contemplated like um, buying a Kaweco Sport in the lavender color because it's just so pretty. Purple is one of my favorite colors, but it's from years ago, so it's sort of hard to find. And then I saw this and I was like, oh, let me just get this one. So it works just as well, and uh, it's just a little bit shorter, so I guess a little bit more portable if you wanted something smaller. And I got this in the medium nib, and it has Diamine Icy Lilac in it right now. A lot of the inks that I have in these pens, they were recently um, inked up in December because I had the Diamine ink vent and had all those new inks to play with. But yeah, Icy Lilac is a little bit light for me, so I don't think I would really use it for writing because, yeah, it's just so light that it's hard to read, and that's like a medium nib too. Next, I have another Jinhao. This is the Jinhao 100 Centennial, and I believe the color is called like seaweed green or something like that, which I don't really think matches the pen. I think the pen is so pretty. Obviously, these are like inexpensive pens, but it basically has that like, mottled kind of like resin look to it. To me, I would call it like the Monet pen because that's what it makes me think of in terms of the colors. So, um, I just wanted to try it out because a lot of people talked about the Jinhao 100 and how like smooth it is. And obviously, I always had good experiences with the Jinhao pens. So, again, it's very inexpensive. So I got this in the medium nib, and right now it has the Diamine Noble Fur uh, in it. And yeah, it is a reliable, you know, smooth writer without any issues. And it's just amazing how, like, these super inexpensive pens, like, they work, perfectly fine. And I do realize, like, if I don't have any luxury pens, maybe I don't know better. Um, but honestly, usually I do like very long journaling sessions. So that is sort of the test. Like, can it write for pages and pages, you know what I mean, and still be comfortable? So, case in point, I have another Jinhao. This is the Jinhao Dadao 9019. And I don't know, everybody was raving about it because I suppose it's a dupe of like a very expensive pen, like maybe a Mont Blanc or the really luxury pens out there. It's extremely big, like chunky, chunky, chunky. I got it like demonstrator transparent color so that you can see the ink inside. I definitely like, pretty colored pens, but I also like the transparent ones because you can see the ink inside. And this is a fine nib, and I put Diamine Chili Nights in it, and it definitely looks very pretty. I like this ink. It's like my favorite ink from the Diamond Inkvent calendar. But yeah, this pen it's just too chunky for me. So it's like fun to play with and write, but I wouldn't use it to write like pages and pages because it's so chunky, like even where you hold the pen. So it's sort of like after a while, it's like stressing my hand out. So obviously made for someone with bigger hands, which is understandable. Obviously, people who have bigger hands probably would prefer a bigger pen. So for me, um, I have realized that that is like too big. And if you go online and search, there they have like the measurements, you know what I mean? Like the diameter of all of these things. So that is like really good information to know. Here I have another Jinhao. It is the X159. And again, I think this is also like supposed to be a Mont Blanc dupe or something. Um, but this one is like still chunky, but less than the 9019. And definitely I can use this a little better than the super chunky 9019 one. So this is the Jinhao X159 in the coffee color. It's like a brown in an F nib, and it's inked up with Diamine Nutmeg. And one thing I did notice is that all of these pens, like they have extra fine, they have medium, but they still seem pretty wide to me in terms of the line. If you go to the brands like Platinum and Sailor, they definitely get smaller, and that's something that people always say, right? Like maybe the Asian brands, their fines are like finer than the Western, like European brands. But Jinhao is Chinese, but they still don't have like ultra fine lines or anything, at least not in my experience. Um, Sometimes I don't know if I can tell the difference between like a fine and a medium. Um, I don't know, they're like so close, you know what I mean? So I don't know how precise like their nibs are, if that makes sense. The next pen I have is sort of like a fail for me, which is sort of sad. It's like my only like American pen, I guess. I don't know. It's a Conklin, all American Pau Preto. It was like limited edition. I have 885 out of the 898. I bought it because it was like super on sale, but also um, in the pictures, like it's rose gold trim, which I really, really like, and it was like very olive colored. But when I got it, I realized it wasn't that olive. It was more like brown. And I mean, it's not their fault or anything like that. I mean, this is actual wood. So obviously there are some variations, and it made me feel like the Traveler's Company olive uh, notebook that a lot of people talk about, where they have an olive colored notebook, but it's very like dark. So it's more like brown as opposed to like what you would think if you wanted an olive colored um, thing. And so again, this pen, it is a chunky pen, but the grip section, it's not like too big, but it is a little heavy and like I have it capped as well. Maybe I shouldn't like oh, I shouldn't post it. But really the issue is that it came with a flex nib, and it could be user error because I probably messed it up and like broke it or like flexed too much or whatever. I didn't actually break the nib. I was trying to take it out and then I broke the feed, I think. Um, I don't know. At some point I'll have to fix it. But what happened was that I basically bought another nib to put into it, but it didn't actually fit because obviously it was the wrong. It was just like a random Mahjong Moomin nib. So it sort of fit, but not really, and it sticks out, so it's like just all messed up right now. And it works, but it it still doesn't write very smoothly, and maybe it's because I don't know, something in it, like it has to be cleaned better, but I sort of don't know how to clean this properly because the pen is made out of wood. So it's not like a plastic pen that you just dump in water and like, let it soak or something and let it really clean. So I don't know, I'm sort of at a standstill and not really knowing how to deal with it. Let me know if you have thoughts, tips, or tricks, but yeah, I'm just letting it sit there for now until I'm ready to like, deal with it a little more because I'm sort of sad that it didn't work out for me very well. So now I'm moving on to my Mahjong Moomin pens. I bought these Mahjong Moomin like Wong Kai minis. I have one that is transparent um, and one that is like purple sparkly, but they are all interchangeable, so you can switch the caps, um, switch the parts, that kind of thing. So one I have inked up with the same roller and cleaner Alt Goldgrun ink because I just love this ink so much. So I have one that is extra fine and one that is fine. This one is the fine one actually. And then another color, I have it in the extra fine. And you can tell a difference between these two nibs if you put them like right next to each other and look at them, but it's not like a dramatic difference. And so it's one thing that I'm just learning about like the different brands, the different nibs. And I do realize that, the less expensive something is, probably less quality control, less possibility of getting like a dud, um, and maybe less precision. So there is that consideration. But honestly, like, I mean, it's all part of the process, right? Like, if you buy an extremely expensive pen, because it's so expensive, wherever you bought it from or the brand, of course, they're going to give you really great customer service to make sure that you get exactly what you were expecting and are happy with your purchase, right? If you buy one of these like $5 pens, there's nowhere to get like customer service really, and it's sort of not worth your time. Um, but the good thing is that you can take these all apart and, play around with them, change the nibs, like do that kind of stuff. And you don't have to worry about like messing anything up because they're, worth so little. And I don't know, it just gives you more freedom to play because they are not like super expensive. And I know that there recently was a video by Simone here on YouTube where she uses these Wong Kai minis with her Pilot Parallel nibs. So that's like really cool. Once I use up these inks, I probably want to play with that because I do have Pilot Parallels and I didn't know how to use them and didn't really spend the time to like learn. But yeah, so now I have another Mahjong or Moomin, or whatever you want to call. They have like two names. But yeah, this is a funny pen, right? It is the Q1, and I got it in transparent color. They do have it in different colors to sort of like mimic real pen, uh, fountain pen or classier fountain pen color combinations, but it is like a short and stubby, chunky pen. And so obviously it is like way too chunky to be comfortable for like long form writing in any way. It really is just because it's cute. And it is an eyedropper, just like the Wonkai minis, and it fits like a lot of ink, like more than a TWSBI Eco, like lots and lots. So for someone who wants like to use, you know, or for someone who doesn't want to have to change their ink often. Although I realized that, like, I got this in an F nib, I should get it. Like, I don't think they have other nib options though, but it would be better to get it as like a stub nib or something, right? Because you can use more ink because it has such a giant reservoir. But I recently noticed that a lot of people use it like holding it in a different way for sketching and drawing because it's sort of like having a piece of like charcoal in your hand. So, just something fun to have and experiment with for giggles, obviously not for long form writing like journaling. And then I have an Asvine V126, and I think this is my only like vacuum filler pen as opposed to all the other like cartridge and converter pens or like piston fill pens like the Eco TWSBIs. This one, it sort of works like the piston type in the sense that on the top you're like screwing it, but you're not like sucking up the ink as you screw, like turn. It's like a vacuum action where like if when you put it in the ink bottle and then you push it down, basically like some science happens and it like sucks in the ink, so it's like a different mechanism. So it's nice to have like variety to see like how this works and how I like it. The pen itself writes very smooth. It's the transparent brown color in M, and I have diamine golden brown in here. And yeah, it writes really well, and it's very like solid. And I guess it's because I have an M too, so it's like really big. But yeah, works well. And finally, I have a Hongdian N8. And I tend to post my pens just because, like, automatically, but you obviously don't have to because these are like pretty full-size pens. But this one is like a red oak leaf patterned kind of pen with gold trim. And the cool thing about it is that it has a long knife nib. And I had not even known about this until I saw like someone's Instagram post or something like that about it. And I was like, what? What's a long knife nib? So to be able to get like a special nib at still a pretty affordable price is really cool because most of the times you just don't have that option. You know what I mean? So a long knife nib is sort of like an architect nib, but instead of just being like um, up and down like a line, like well, I'm sure someone else could explain this better because I'm a newbie, but basically, like a stub nib, it seems like you have a horizontal line for the nib, right? The tip of it. An architect nib would be the other way, like up and down straight line. But a long knife is like up and down, but like a pear shape. So, like it has a butt on the bottom. So, basically, what it allows you to do is write very thin if you angle upwards, but if you angle downwards, it gets thicker and on the sides. So it's like there's this variation, and this pen works so well. It's so smooth right out of the box, and I feel like it makes my handwriting just look cooler. And I'm not even doing anything different. So I'm coming back the next day because I totally forgot that I also have the Mahjong capless, and I got this recently. So that's why it wasn't like part of the regular list. And I was gonna add it in here, but I think I'm gonna refrain from adding it because I'm not really adding any like useful information, I guess. The story of this pen is actually pretty a warning for all of you newbies out there, because I was so excited to try a capless pen. And obviously, these are the dupes. There's a Majohn and there's a Jinhao dupe for the Pilot capless. That's way cheaper, like 15, 20 bucks. So I was so excited to get it. When I received it in the mail, I immediately like unscrewed it and I wanted to like stick the cartridge in and ink it up. But what happened was that, again, this is me being my clumsy self and not thinking before doing. I basically put the cartridge in with the nib unit still in the pen. So like basically I couldn't see like how far I was pushing it in. Like you're supposed to take the nib unit out, uncap, put the put the cartridge in, and then like recap it, and then put it back in the pen body. But like I had just unscrewed it, and basically the nib unit was still in the pen, with the spring and everything, and I had just taken the cap out and stuck the cartridge in and obviously used too much force, so that basically this whole nib unit was stuck down into the pen and I couldn't get it back out. It was like devastating. I mean, I basically, you know, ruined the pen kind of thing. And it took me a long time to find tools and something small enough to be able to like jab it and push it and grab it and take it out. And of course, I distorted the metal and it's like sort of messed up. I basically mangled it, but somehow I made it work still. Um, and it's really hard to get the cap back onto the nib unit because of the fact that I've bent the metal and it's all like bashed up kind of thing. And I think I scratched the outside of the pen too, because otherwise this would be like a very classy matte black kind of pen. But you can see like it's all mangled. And obviously, you can work at it and try to fix it and, push the edges out a little more and try to make it better. But basically, it was user error. So I can't even tell you if this pen is working the way it's supposed to work or if something weird is happening because of the fact that I bashed it. Um, but thankfully, even with my mistreatment, I was able to get a cartridge in and reassemble everything and actually put it in properly so that it is a capless pen. And like I said, I had pushed it from like the nib side as well. I basically did all the wrong things and mistreated this pen, but it still works. So I get to play around with it now and see if I like the capless pen, basically. So you can see here I didn't like close this up properly. Like basically this nib unit, it has that cap that covers the cartridge, so you have to insert that in so that the whole nib unit is like the right um, length. Otherwise, it when you put it back in the pen, it's not going to be the right length that you can click it, right, to come out. But yeah, just lots of woes with this, and this is why I said maybe I am not yet leveled up for an expensive pen, because I would be a lot more traumatized if I did that with a very expensive pen. But yeah, so I'm just gonna play with this and see what happens. Right now, I have like one of those random ink cartridges. I don't know, it's some kind of black inks, but I don't really like it. So I'm gonna have to just play around and use it up and then actually ink it up with an ink before I add it to my list um, of fountain pens, basically. But that is basically the last one in my collection, if you can call it that. And so that is my quote unquote currently inked, but not really currently inked for the month, but like currently inked for 2025 because I don't know when I will be re-inking other ones. I know that it's not good to waste ink, but sometimes like something just doesn't jive with me, so I will empty it out and put another ink in it. It just depends on what I'm exploring and what I'm playing with at the time. So far in my 2025 Hobonichi Techo, this is what I have. I just have a few pages with a quick and dirty, list of the pens and inks that I have in them so that I can remember and also have a record uh, of what's going on in my fountain pen journey. My goal is to spend a lot of time just playing with my pens and my inks and taking notes and my impressions and trying to learn more basically through actual practical use and experimentation. And hopefully, I can come back with an update where I can actually tell you much more information from like a beginner's perspective, but through, practical use and experimentation. So that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching, and I very much appreciate you being here and supporting me. Um, I definitely will be filling up this older Techo with all of my experimentations. So I hope that I can share that with you at some point and then actually dive into the 2025 version that I already have ready and waiting for me. So I hope you have a very lovely day. Please hit the like button if you enjoyed this video and subscribe if you want to see more stationery related videos upcoming. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.